is the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, brought to you by Cisco. Cisco is here to help set you up for success by delivering high-quality foods, products, and services for your restaurant. Recording live to digital from the NCF&B studios in downtown Raleigh. Join us as we lead you into the kitchen, inside the bottle, and into the minds of the food and beverage industry. And now, could we have more time? We haven't even looked at our menus. It's Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today, in studio, we have a big whale here. And I don't mean that by the size of him, although he's a tall guy.
Big drink of water.
Tall drink of water. He is the Senior Director of Food and Beverage Operations for Concord Hospitality, spanning the globe, basically. One, Chef Dean Thompson.
Hey, how's it going, fellas? It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah,
Appreciate
man.
it.
It's great to have you in the studio and finally having someone of your esteem on these microphones, you know?
Oh, well, I don't know. I feel like that's a little too much to be saying.
Wait, are you? That sounds like you're downputting all the other people that have come before him for the low 405 or 6 episodes that we've had. Like,
No. We got a corporate chef up in this motherfucker.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
corporate.
Yeah.
Here we go.
This is, to all my chefs out there, this is the guy with the clipboard, folks. This is the guy.
Proudly. At
Now
this
you're
point, man, I'm too
you're
old.
bringing him up, and now you're dogging him.
It's a compliment sandwich, my friend.
You're like the Office Space chef. You're just like walking around with like the bill guy and be like, how
Checking
those TPS reports?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, and I kid. Like, I like to just kind of start it back as a lot of times, like, how do we know each other or how are we connected? Because many times in this industry, we're all connected in this business. And we were just talking off mic before we got here, and Chef Dean over here was once the chef at the Renaissance Hotel in North Hills, where it was just across the street from when I was the GM at Midtown Grill. My Chef Scott James went to the finals, I want to say, against you in the Fire in the Triangle back in the day, and I had just moved here. I think you beat him, sorry, Scott, in the finals in 2014, or maybe it was 2013, and you went back-to-back.
Yeah, 13. So
Did you beat him both times? I think you beat him in the semis one year and then the finals the next year.
I think I got him in the finals the first year. I don't think I went against him the second year.
Okay. Yeah, and you were this like mythical guy because the Renaissance, for those that don't know, is like kind of the swanky bougie hotel in North Hills, which is already swanky and bougie. Right. And so it was this place where, you know, you had Flights. That was the name of the restaurant that was inside of the Renaissance. And so you, of course, were the chef of that menu, and you were, you know, kind of overseeing all the outlets, and we knew of you well, and you had been kicking ass like crazy, but you were like the guy that, you know, like,
I was under the radar. Nobody knew who I was.
Exactly.
Until that, you know?
Exactly. And then this guy just pops off, starts winning these competitions left and right. We'll get into competition dining later because we also just saw each other recently for the Cooking for the Kids, of which my chef, Kyle Tiers, took the whole thing home, which was pretty cool over at Crafton. And, but it was great. You were a judge at that event, and that's how we kind of recently reconnected. And we were talking, and I just kind of want to start with your career as it pertains now. And as Matt mentioned before, you're the Concord Hospitality, you're the Senior Director of F&B Operations for Concord Hospitality, where you oversee over 150, 60 outlets of food operation across the nation. So, like, you got a lot on your plate. Would you give us just a little insight or overview? Like what does a work day look like for Chef Dean?
Man, I spend about 50% of my time on the road now. What I've been tasked with over the past year and a half is new opening. So I'm doing all of our rooftop bars, restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. Our major outlets that we would essentially equate to a separate entity of a hotel. It's not necessarily your standard issue like Courtyard or something like that. We operate them as if they are standalone. So that goes, you know, we do branding, and when I say we do, that means we're part of the process. We have companies that come in and do do the design, the spatial layout, and we act as consultants with them essentially up until the point of the place being built. And then about 6 months out, I'm in charge of the critical paths that lead up to opening the place.
Oh, there's a good corporate term right there. Critical paths.
Yeah.
Explain that.
All right. So that's all the stuff that needs to get done, man. And there's a timeline to it. So it's everything from like hiring to menus getting done, printed, ordered, everything that you can imagine that goes into opening a restaurant or bar, OS&E order, operating supplies and equipment. So it's a checklist essentially that needs to get done in order to be to the point where we can start our training program with all of our employees. I've designed the training program. I did that back in 2019, 2020. And I've got, we've got a training team that comes in with me and I facilitate the training. So, one of the things we talked about a minute ago was how much do I have in the beverage? I don't. I oversee it and I help with the training program, but I'm not, I can make you a drink, but I'm not an expert at it, and I'm not going to pretend to be. I'm really good at facilitating and executing difficult things, essentially, in this industry.
But you're helping, you can help the beverage people find out which vendors they're ordering from, how they should design a menu, what their costs are looking like, that kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. And I know what tastes good.
Yeah, you know what tastes
I mean?
good. So I got to ask, I'm sure a lot of chefs are listening now and they're saying, ooh, I want to do that. That sounds exciting. I want, but first of all, the travel piece. So like you said, you're getting on a critical path at 6 months out. Does that mean every time you're opening up a new restaurant, you're basically living or in that city for about 6 months leading up to?
No. Okay. So I do it remotely. So,
this job gets better and better every minute.
Yeah, some of the travel is me checking in on a place in the construction phase.
Okay.
And walking it, understanding the flow of it. It's one thing to see it in a blueprint or rendering or whatever, but it's another thing to walk the space and understand the flow of guests, the flow of staff, so on and so forth, dirty in.
To this day, I'm the worst blueprint reader. I can't see it. It doesn't make sense into my mind unless I see it in at least 3 dimensions.
Man, it's tough. We do a lot of construction and design on kitchens and bars and layout. It's never what you anticipate.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, damn it, we should have done something different here. And we've been doing this now for 4 or 5 years. And it's, I don't know that we've gotten to a place where we still feel very confident in what we've done. And we've worked with experts who do it and we just execute it. And then even then we still have to go back and change things. So
as we know, and sorry, because there's some good ones, but contractors are the worst.
Sure.
Builders, they're the worst. It's never on time. It's never on budget. It's always a mess. We all know that. You always have to, you basically have to go into something with, whatever they tell you the date, add 3 months. Whatever they tell you the money scope, add 15% minimum, and then start from there. And you lower your expectations.
Yeah, I mean, the company I work for is actually, if we're the ones involved in doing the development, it's usually pretty damn close, man. We're talking 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Anytime we're not doing the development, it's quite a challenge, man. I've seen them where they're a year and a half late, which.
But then no one ever wants to say it's my fault. I'm sorry, man. I couldn't do it. It's my bad. It's always it's China, bro.
Yeah,
the unions, the docks in
I'm
France.
so tired of
right
hearing
now.
that shit,
or
man.
You didn't approve the plans. You didn't say yes on them.
Yeah, you remember that one time I just said via email text and my phone went out because I was traveling to Tahiti and all that, and then you
on the advance you gave me.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You said that you wanted it to be underground, and you're like, well, all right, thanks, buddy. But all right, so but let's get. I like to go into what you're doing is kind of it's broad, but I know that when you get to a particular place, then you are extremely detailed and focused on. I mean, that's that's why you have the job. It's not like so that you could just do all the big stuff. It's like, no, they want to know where you can put your print on this. So you are like, you're being very detail oriented when you're talking about restaurant layout, kitchen layout, equipment, all that. I find it to be fascinating. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of those conversations recently, like building crafting and all that, and speccing for others. But so like, where's your head with like restaurant design right now versus like where it was, even say pre-COVID? Like, where are you going, like with how you're viewing the way customers are going to view your place?
Oof, man, that's a great question.
So I just made it up right now.
Ownership nowadays, man, they don't want to give you the space. The back of the house space to them is not going to represent any type of top line revenue, any of that stuff in most cases, because what you're dealing with are developers, real estate folks, for the most part, people who are looking to make money on every serviceable square foot. So the more they can cut out of the back of the house, they see dollar signs essentially. For me, I don't look at it that way. So it's a very tough. When we're talking about spatial layout, there's industry standards essentially of like how much kitchen space or back of the house space you're going to need for this amount of serviceable space, and we're always fighting for that, man. It's a tough one to sell to people who haven't necessarily worked in our industry, so they're more about how fast is this place going to pay for itself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So every square foot to them
is a revenue generator.
Well, that's the way they look at it. Whereas I know that's not the case.
Yeah.
We've got rooftop bars that are 2,000 square feet making $3.5 million a year, and you might have one that's 4,000 square feet making only $2 million.
Yeah.
So you can't. It's really about the quality of service, the quality of food, the drinks. How fast can you turn them out?
Yeah.
Well,
speaking of quality of service, I want to tell you really quick about somebody who knows something about that. And Sysco, is the global food service leader, and they are very proud to be the title sponsor of the NCF&B podcast. Fresh food and fresh ideas are at the heart of food and service. Sysco delivers exceptional produce, custom cuts of meat, high-quality seafood, and imported foods, offering global flavors to you locally. They have a network of culinary experts who offer consulting and business planning services to enhance your menu and perhaps your square footage revenue, keep you on top of emerging trends, and increase the efficiencies that grow your business. Sysco Shop puts the power of the on-the-go ordering in your hands. You can search Sysco's complete product catalog, locate key items from any page, and place quick and easy orders on your schedule. Visit Sysco.com to learn more about Sysco Shop and the other great ways Sysco can help grow your restaurant business. Sysco, at the heart of food and service.
All right. Yeah, sorry, I was moving around all these cameras, but that actually leads me into checking out. Everybody, if you haven't checked us out on YouTube, check us out on YouTube. And we're working on some additional new technologies, like putting our video through iTunes Video, which is pretty cool. There's always a caveat. There's always a give and take. You can't have everything. If we do it this way, then Spotify doesn't like us because they don't like our MP4 files, and then this and that. It's just a bunch of nonsense. But
this emerging tech world.
Yeah, there will be someone. This will have to be the next sponsor that comes on for the podcast, is the one that puts it all together to get audio and video all on one outlet. But I don't think that one exists at this very moment. So for now, check us out. Look at our faces are so beautiful, and our lighting is really nice now. So
the lighting is really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, we look like a bunch of influencers like hanging out in Tahiti with these ring lights. But
you're really big on Tahiti today.
It's all about Tahiti. I really would just want to go to Tahiti.
Like Jean-Paul Gauguin, you've been reading a lot of seeing a lot of Gauguin paintings, or what's going on with that?
No, I just ate at Trader Vic's in Atlanta, and those tiki cocktails are still on my brain.
Well, maybe Concord Hospitality. Do you guys have a restaurant or hotel in Tahiti? Maybe that's
unfortunately not, man.
Yeah, maybe Max can help you franchise out there.
I'd probably be on the road a little extra,
Yeah. So let me ask you, Dean, when was the last time you cooked on the line?
Oof.
Oh my God.
During COVID.
during COVID.
So I went to DC during COVID, and I got, like everybody else, we, lost my job for a bit, and
got furloughed.
got whatever terminology you want to use.
Yeah.
I wasn't working in my job, and that sucked because we had just opened up an incredible rooftop bar in West Palm Beach. It's our highest grossing outlet in the company, and then about a month later, COVID hit. We were working on another project up in Milwaukee at the time. And, we made it like 6 weeks once COVID hit or whatever. And then, they had no other choice but to nobody knew what was going to happen. We were getting word from China and, our biggest partner is Marriott. So, we were hearing this was going to go all the way through the end of the year and possibly into the following year, so on and so forth, based on what was happening in China. So, they had to make the decision, and I ended up going and working at one of our hotels in D.C. as the executive chef. The ownership put me up in the hotel, let me live there, and it was incredible. It was, like everybody else, it was a very tough situation, I think, for most people, COVID. I don't want to make it sound like, I enjoyed it, but I got back in the kitchen. I worked. Most of the staff was DC natives, a lot of inner city folks, and we just rocked it, man. We had such a good time, at least in the kitchen. It was tough for me to be away from family. Probably drank and ate a little too much during that time period. Obviously, living in the hotel, working in the hotel.
Sure.
But, man, we tripled the amount of covers we did over year.
Wow.
We introduced brunch. Brunch took off. We were in one of the only open areas in D.C. at the time. But, man, it was a wild time with the election and everything. Man, it felt like you were in a damn, war zone.
I bet.
It was crazy. So
that was in the heart of lockdown.
Heart of lockdown. It was during the election.
Yeah.
I was there for 10 months, man, living it almost, no offense to anybody in prison here, but it almost felt a little bit like being in jail or prison.
Yeah, because you're not going anywhere. Plus, you're working like multiple services.
Yeah, and you finish every day with a couple shots and a couple beers, and it's just like, all right, let's do it again tomorrow.
Did you mark those in under employee drinks?
No. We went to the little Irish pub underneath.
All right.
At the end of,
all right. I want to know a couple things. So we talked about this, touched on it for a second, but it seems like your career path was set up for this. So like if another young chef is looking like, how do I get to where Chef Dean is? You went to Johnson & Wales, so you're culinarily trained, but also they give you a little bit of admin there, education. And that's not my question, but you can touch on that in a second. But then also you were in hotels, and that seems to me, if you're running a hotel food program within the confines of that gives you a lot of back of the house administration, P&L experience that would, I think, set you up for a job like this.
Yeah, man. I got into the industry when I was like maybe 15 years old. So I know I was 15 at one point, and
washing dishes or
working with my brother.
I was 15 at one point too. Yeah.
Well, I might have started.
You were just trying to get Toblerones from your uncle. Remember that story?
Yeah, I was 5 at that one. But yeah.
I think I worked at like a TCBY for like a week.
Oh yeah, the country's best yogurt.
For like a week when I was like 14, and then you had to have a worker's permit, and then my brother was like a manager at this deli over in Cary, and I went and worked for him. I thought I'd be washing dishes, man, but he stuck me on the grill. This place would do like $250 for lunch, and we were very competitive. We played a lot of sports, and we were just kind of wild back then. He'd come down there and yell in my ear like, "Hurry the up, man!" We got a lot, just yelling at me and giving me shit about being slow. But anyway, I learned to love the atmosphere. It's kind of like the same adrenaline rush, I think, as you get in playing sports. And it was almost kind of like the locker room type vibe,
Yeah, hot and sweady.
Hot, yeah, well, you went there. I meant more like the teamwork.
Camaraderie. Oh, okay,
hot and sweaty, yeah. But yes, it was hot as hell too. But it was just something I really enjoyed, but we also really looked up to the owners. They had a couple of sister places, NY Pizza in Cary. They used to have a few extra of those. But we just admired those guys. We saw it as a business opportunity.
Yeah.
And wanted to be owners like them at some point. And when I turned 18, I decided to go to Johnson & Wales to kind of pursue. I felt that being a chef was the best way to go about it initially. And then you get into the industry and you realize, well, hell, I can probably make a decent life out of just being a chef. But I think after getting into it a little bit, man, and I worked in restaurants up in Providence, Rhode Island for a couple years. Came down to back home to see, this is where I'm from. I'm from Cary.
Yeah.
So I came back home. I worked in some restaurants, went to a country club, ended up coming up the ranks there quite a bit, eventually becoming a sous chef. And at the time, my brother was cooking too. He was an exec sous. And, the guy he was working for knew the food and beverage director who was about to open up the Renaissance and put a good word in for me. He ended up interviewing me and hired me as his exec sous.
Okay.
I got the exec sous chef at the Renaissance back in 2008. And then I think at that point, I knew that staying the route of being in restaurants, like, man, it's not that I don't want to say that being in hotels or anything like that isn't a lot of work, but I felt like it had a higher ceiling at the time. Mm-hmm. And I like the stability of, like, I don't know, I want to have a life too.
Yeah.
Eventually. So working towards getting to a certain point where when you're the executive chef, food and beverage director in a hotel, you certainly have a better work-life balance than you do in the restaurant industry, man.
Sure.
So, at that point too, I don't know that I had the balls to go in and try doing something, ownership-wise. Probably a good thing because I probably wouldn't have,
I think
been
that's
ready for it.
I think that's such an important point that, and a lot of us are struggling. Max, I know you can speak to this, but it's like, and I have this constant struggle because I want to be an owner. I want to own my own. I work in wine distribution. I want to own my own importer one day. Mm-hmm. But then again, I'm like, I see all my friends. I see what Max has to deal with on a daily basis, and I'm like, man, that's a lot. And there's something to be said for it. There's both ways to it, to just do it for somebody else, but you don't take on all that burden and of course the financial risk.
Sure. I mean, you got to know the statistics aren't in your favor.
Ain't that a bitch?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. I could tell you volumes about what it's like to be a business owner, but
I'm more equipped now than I've ever been to be able to go and do it, and I feel like I can go into the industry now as an owner and be successful. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the capital and the backing, like, you've got very little chance to survive a year or two.
Yep.
And that's
especially in this current economy.
Yeah, and the market now is so saturated now with different amazing spots in most cases, right? It's hard to be relevant through year after year after year.
Yeah.
Without the new guy coming in and beating you.
So, okay, how does Concord Hospitality then strategically find their new projects, seeing as the current market and what it is?
Man, some of that stuff's over my head. So
meaning they find the project and they're like, chef, go make it work.
This is what we want. Yeah. In most cases, do
they come to you with a concept as well? Like, oh, we think this is going to be a pub, or we think this is going to be fine dining, or we think whatever.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways it works. We deal with so many different ownership groups because we're the management company.
Okay.
So we have relationships with these ownership groups. They might say, hey, we're building a hotel in Lansing, Michigan, and it's going to be a dual property. So you got, let's say, hypothetically speaking, a Hyatt on one side and a Marriott on the other. And there's going to be a large space at the bottom that they want to, essentially, the owners decided not to lease it out. He wants to own it and wants us to manage a restaurant there, and he's going to build it out for us.
Sure.
All right. So, number one, these are hotel owners. These aren't one first time restaurant owners, these people have capital and they have investors. So to build something out for $2-3 million,
it's not a problem.
Yeah, as long as they know that they're going to get the return, that's the idea. They want their return in, let's say, 5 years. And they have business models, specifically, and it might be that they're all different. I can't speak to every single owner, but in some cases, they want to own a place for 5 years, and then they want to sell it. They want to pay it off first, and then sell it, and typically, make a lot of money off of them.
Get out.
And it's all part of the whole hotel. I'm not just talking about the restaurant itself. I'm talking about everything.
So Concord doesn't actually own any of the properties or the businesses. They just simply management contract.
We do own some of them. Not in most cases, we don't own them 100% though. And there's plenty of them that we own 51% that we almost act as silent partners, but we manage it.
Got it. And then you get a management contract on that as well. Yeah.
That's kind of the way the Four Seasons runs. That's the way the Ritz runs. And then when I worked for Summit Hospitality, I guess like most hotel management companies kind of work in that capacity. Like you manage it. You're kind of the team that comes in to run a property, but then you're also in managing it, you could also take a little ownership stake in it too. I mean, after a while, after the company grows up, then it's like, hey, we could actually own some of this. So we're going to do that and this and that. And then you have all these partnerships with the hoteliers, like the Hiltons and the Marriotts and all that, because your hotels are those, right? Like they're versions of?
Yep. So we have Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, Choice, IHG. We have some independent properties now.
Aren't there really only like 2 hoteliers in the whole world, essentially? Isn't it just Marriott and Hilton?
No, IHG is pretty big.
IHG is huge.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Choice is huge. I mean, really. And then, man, Hyatt's got some bangers right now, man. They keep going out and buying.
They've been killing it.
They're buying up all these like really, really nice properties across the country that were independent at one point and making them part of their product.
As their like boutique.
That's where I stayed when I saw Tay-Tay in ATL.
Hey.
It was at a Hyatt. Yeah, it was nice.
We just stayed at one at our leadership conference down in Orlando, man. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Every conference in Orlando.
Yeah. It was cool. It was great. It was great to see people, But we get so much flack in our company, man, because we're always fighting with everybody because, we're F&B guys, you know what I mean? So
what are you fighting about? Like better pricing?
No, I'm talking about with internally, with GMs and things like that and like RVPs. It's just part of the gig, man. It's like checks and balances type thing. Like they're so, and oftentimes we want to spend money and they don't want us to. That's probably the best way to explain it.
Yeah, that's something I wanted you to help, like, kind of relate this to. I would say probably more of our typical listener, especially if the listener is in the industry, which I know a lot of you are.
Yeah.
But like, you're one of them. You're a corporate guy, but you're really one of us. You're a wolf in sheep's clothing a little bit. You were a cook. And then you were a chef, and then now you're in more of a larger corporate position because you're really good at your job and you've moved on and doing this. But you're like, when you bring a creative and you put them into like a technical situation, sometimes you're the round peg in a square hole or whatever.
Oh, dude, it's tough, man. That's the hardest part when we talk about like going into the hotel industry versus the restaurant or any of this other stuff. It's that interdepartmental communication that you have with everybody else that they don't speak your F&B talk, man. And like you said, you have to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, and some of these, like your restaurants and stuff like that, you just remain a wolf. You don't have to wear the clothing.
Right. And in fact, that's what they want to do. I mean, I actually even wrote this down as like psychologically, how did you change your mentality, organization, creativity in this position? Because it feels like if you're a chef or a GM or a bartender or a sommelier, a lot of times you're in the moment and you kind of react to situations and you create things, but you're so in the moment. Like it's a
more reactive than proactive.
Yeah, I mean, like you're reactive to like what Cisco, let's say, might have on special for like Fresh Point's going to deliver these, ramps are in season, so you're like cool, like. You're reactive to thanks Cisco and Fresh Point to like what they have in their stock, and they're like, this is seasonal, so this is available. So now you are reacting to the season and you're creating a special and it's happening today. But on a corporate level and on a wide range of things, you've got to be able to project outside of that. You got to think in a different mentality. So I wonder if you could share your insight as to like your growing pains and your adjustments, and maybe even like how it didn't go right so much at the beginning, and how you've learned to like kind of be more of that kind of corporate chef while still being Dean Thompson, by still being a chef.
I think most of that transition that you're talking about happened as, going into the hotel piece of it before I moved on to corporate. And I still struggle with some of that stuff today, man.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Wow, man, I think part of it is the way I grew up. I think it's my leadership style. I'm kind of a chameleon. I can get along with your dishwasher the same way I can get along with the CEOs and these owners. But I'm a no bullshit kind of person, and people recognize that, and I don't mean like I'm a hard ass, but I mean that I'm not going to blow smoke either. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to give you this fantasy that's not going to happen. I'm just kind of going to give you the way it is. And, I've heard, one of my buddies is always like, the CEO of MGM asked him a question the other day, and he was like, well, do you want me to hit you between the eyes, or do you want me to fluff it up? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And it's managing.
Put that on the clips.
Yeah, it's managing that, I think, sometimes, or like just being real about it. Like, what reaction do you want from me right now? Are you asking me this question because you want to know the answer?
Yeah, or you just want me to.
Or are you just doing it so that you feel better when you walk out of here? Because if that's the case, I'll just give you like the candy coated version that like. And managing that for me is by far the hardest part. The people who do really good at that are my bosses. You know what I mean? And hopefully one day I'll get to that point, but I will say I don't love that part of the business.
Yeah. Like how many meetings per week are you in? And is essentially most of your job meetings?
Man, I have a few meetings a day. It just depends. Some days I could have like 6-hour-long meetings. Some days there's 2.
Yeah.
And it's tough because when I'm doing these openings that I mentioned, they can take me, and this is where I am on property. I can be there from anywhere from from a month to a minimum of like 7 to 10 days for an opening.
Okay.
So I just did one that took a month in Charlotte, North Carolina. And
what spot is that?
It's Hestia rooftop. It's in Ballantyne, and it's doing very, very well
I'm sure.
thus far.
I was going to say earlier that Max asked a question about how in this present world has design and not menu design, but restaurant design changed. I have to imagine that outdoor space is more premium than ever.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, COVID had an impact on that.
Because you mentioned rooftop bars now like 4 times, so that's got to be on the. That seems to be.
They print money.
Yeah.
They just absolutely print money. You put something on a rooftop, and if you put a good restaurant that's got a hell of a beverage program and you program it right, man, you can make so much money based on that square footage. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's got to be programmed properly, and revenue mix has to be right.
Right.
I guess for people to relate to that, what I mean is the amount of beverage sold to food, the dollar figure there.
What do you look?
What's your percentage? What's success?
What's a healthy? Yeah.
Well, it depends. Like if it's going to be a food-driven rooftop bar, we're probably looking at like closer to 50-50.
Food-driven rooftop bar. That's ironic.
Close to 50-50 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Well, like a typical like a traditional restaurant in one of your hotels is like, what is it? Like a 60-40 split food to alcohol?
65 to 35 is our average.
Meaning
regular restaurant
is 65?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Correct.
So
and then it's exactly flip-flop for a rooftop bar.
Okay.
yeah.
That's our averages. Now we have some properties that are doing 10% food.
Yeah, because you're just killing it on drinks.
Yeah. And then we have some that are, our biggest grossing one currently. We're gonna have one that beats it soon. Man, they're like probably 60-40 beverage to food. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know last month they did 997,000 in just beverage.
So
In the month.
why you're using that metric just to get inside your head is because you're looking for a healthy mix. basically is more sustainable long term. Is that
Well,
the thinking?
another part of my job, man, is I do a lot of analytics on this stuff so that we can. I work with our business development team and do underwriting and things like that for these hotels to come up with budgets.
Sure.
And also get financing from the banks.
Right.
Because you got to prove what you're going to make and blah, blah, blah. So I know everything from like how much money we make per square foot in a rooftop bar versus a restaurant. And
So it's
Wait, let's not gloss over the fact that you just said that outlet is essentially making $1 million in just beverage in a month.
1 month.
yeah.
Are you serious? Like that's so crazy.
Dude, on top of that, they did like 857,000 in food or something like that.
Where is this location?
West Palm Beach. Man.
Oh, yeah.
So they're pulling in 1.2 or 1.8 a month. I mean, and that's not every month, but that's probably a good month, right?
Oh, it might be their best month ever. I mean, when I saw it,
April
I
in Florida, I would think is pretty ideal because everyone's still coming down because it's spring break for a lot of Northeasterners or cold area, so they're moving to Florida. So yeah, that's got to be a pretty awesome.
Like, what's the seating capacity of a place like
Man,
that?
it's small.
You're killing me by telling me it's small.
It's
If
like
it was
3,000. It's a rooftop bar with a pool, and so the pool eats up quite a bit of space.
Water's $18, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's not cheap, buddy. It ain't cheap, man. You don't have
That's
to be
for the
cheap
tap
in West
water.
Palm Beach.
That's what I'm saying.
Boss is 30.
They're like, can I get free water? And you see the guy just put a glass in the pool. He's like, here you go, bro.
Yeah, West Palm's finest, baby.
Yeah, I'm sure the rent ain't cheap either, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the top of one of our hotels, so it's all built in. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah, they own
That
the place.
hotel sold within a year of it being, and I take pride in that because I'm the one who opened. It was my first big opening.
Wow.
And it's got multiple outlets, rooftop bar, restaurant, and man, it's the reputation. That's what I love about it. Is all these hotels, their reputation is more built on their food and beverage programming, than it is on anything else. And it could be the most beautiful hotel in the world, but if we don't build these 400 to 2,000 room hotels, we're typically underneath 400. Usually our happy spot is 200-ish.
Yeah.
For some of these bigger properties that have F&B.
Because occupancy is just it's a shitty game to play. Like the funny thing is, I come from I worked in the New York Palace Hotel back in the early 2000s or late aughts, I guess they call it, and even though
he says that, but he was actually he just worked at the bar. He wore tight clothes and he waited for travelers to come in and take him home.
Exactly, because of this handsome face.
Right.
What was your price? What was your price?
That I won't disclose. It's lower now. Let me tell you.
OnlyFans / Weiss wine.
But in there, even though it was the restaurant I worked at was called Guilt, and it had a Michelin star, and then actually when I left, it got its second Michelin star. It was a loss leader. It was just an amenity for people to come into the hotel. What you're saying is completely flipped on. Like the hotel occupancy doesn't really matter. It's the food and beverage.
Well, I don't want to say the occupancy doesn't
It doesn't matter.
That's crazy talk.
It's the second part. It's
but
the
the
second
reputation, the local reputation for that hotel locally, and even by the guests who stay there, it's going to be based on how great that amenity is what I'm saying. So,
but you're making money on all sides. You're making money on the occupancy. You're making money on the hotel.
But believe
activation.
me, there's a visceral connection when you walk into a badass rooftop bar. You walk into a badass room, you're like, oh, this is nice, and it's like, all right, cool.
Right. I'm going to sleep here. I'm not hanging out.
I'm going to go up to the rooftop bar and.
We were just having this conversation with Vivian where she's, that's her thought is to kind of activate the upstairs, the chef and the farmer as like a very tight boutique Airbnb.
Yeah. Because
she also knows she's like, renting out a place, like once it's been built out and it's developed, there's not a lot of overhead after that. I mean, there's some upkeep maintenance, but like once you put it out there and if you can just keep re-renting that room every day, all the time, it's going to pay for itself pretty quickly.
Oh, don't let me fool you. The money's in the hotel itself.
Okay.
We're looking at a lot of profit coming out of there. We're fortunate to hit, 20 to 30% in some of these operations. The hotel's doing much better than that.
Yeah, they never wash the duvet covers. So of course.
I'll let you in on a little secret. It usually doesn't cost the hotel much more than $30 per room.
Yeah.
So whatever you're spending, that's what they get to take.
Yeah, they're making all.
Oh, I know. That was my employee discount rate when I wanted to go stay places, was like $33, and that was because that's how much it costs.
Yeah, so we gotta know you when we're traveling, Dean. What's that? What's that promo code?
That's how much your soap costs. You know what I mean?
Seriously. That's why I take all the soaps and the shampoos from the maid cart. I got to get my ROI. What I wanted to ask you this earlier. So, do you think that going to Johnson and Wales help prepare you for a job like this?
Man, that's a good question too. Oof. I mean, listen, Johnson and Wales was a great school. I don't know that I would tell someone they have to go to school. My counterpart at work, man, he barely he has his GED. He doesn't. Okay. He never went.
Like the guy who's you guys work together in the same capacity.
Yeah. He does all the
analytics and stuff.
Well, I mean, we have kind of different roles.
Okay.
I'm more of a visual guy, creative. I can execute some of these creative ideas and blah, blah, blah. He's more of the technical guy.
Which is funnier, too, because that's a lot of times what you go to school for, is to learn all the technical stuff. So,
man, I'm a visual learner. That's not my skill set. Like, whatever we have going on here, all this technology and stuff.
Yeah.
I've got zero chance of being able to figure this out. I'm like dyslexic. So yeah, I've got a very specific way of learning, but I'm like really good at it when I do, I guess.
Okay.
But I mean, I think Johnson Wales was beneficial. It gave you, some of the things I said earlier about the fact that, 10% of restaurants make it past the second year.
Yeah.
Like they're transparent about all that stuff. And they know that when they're looking in that classroom, they'll tell you, like, 75% of you there's no way you'll ever be an executive chef.
Mm.
They don't blow smoke in there.
That's cool. That sucks, but it's cool that
the industry has changed so much, though, man. When we were coming up, like the majority, like you had to know how to speak Spanish for one. I would say 75% of the kitchens I've ever worked in were Hispanic. Right. Whether it's Guatemalan,
¿Hablas
Mexican,
español?
Yeah, poquito. I've ran out of my Spanish. You know what I mean? Like it's something
Kitchen
that you got to keep.
Yeah.
You got to keep practicing it, and you get better and better. I haven't done it much, but I do it every now and again to embarrass my kids. Like when the Spanish teacher opens the door to let them in, out of the car.
Buenos dias.
He's like,
I go, buenos dias.
Huevos blancos solo, por favor. Mi amigo. Egg whites only, please.
Yeah.
It's like, what? All I know is brunch terms in Spanish. Yeah.
Okay, so that leads into my next question. So it sounds like if you went and saw, yourself 20 years ago, you'd be like, I don't know, you can do this, but you don't have to do it. Like, it seems like industry experience is could arguably be more valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you
Plus, you're getting paid as opposed to paying.
Well, it helps you get in the door, though. Don't get me don't get me wrong. Like the restaurants I worked at in Providence, Rhode Island, were the best ones.
Okay,
and I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not gone to Johnson Wales.
Because you went to Johnson Wales up there in Rhode Island. That's why the Providence connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, every restaurant. It's number one. It's the most underrated food city in America.
Yeah. Tough town though. Like
it's
tough,
dude.
Gritty.
You want to see some fights? Go out on a Friday night.
Providence. Do you remember Napa Valley Grill out there? In Providence?
I do.
So I used to work for them. I was their I guess bar manager back in the day before I even knew Matt. And they had
not in Providence I worked Santa Monica,
Westwood,
in
Los Angeles. But we had a good one in Providence, and so funny too because like one of my coworkers at Midtown, John Penrose, he worked at that one.
Oh, wow.
In Providence, and then here we are meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're working at the same restaurant, having just worked for the same company like just a year or two before. It was so weird.
Yeah.
But okay, so like the education, didn't help you necessarily for this corporate job, but it helped you become a chef and to like kind of understand food and food complexities and all.
Understand the industry for sure.
Did it help you? Was there a course on competition dining? Because
man, I'm just naturally competitive. Like,
well, I'm going to be facetious when I say this, but you are the ultimate competitive chef in this area. Having won this award a couple of times, I think you won it. It's changed names over the years, right? Sure. You've had the Fire in the Triangle, then it was Cooking for a Classic. Now it is Cooking for the Kids. I found it to be very ironic because speaking with Dean Ogan, the other Dean.
Yeah.
He was saying they did cooking for a classic where they put a nice classic car up as the winner, but most chefs, upon receiving the classic vehicle, just traded it in for cash
Because they didn't want to pay the taxes on it.
Well, that, and also just like they're like, I'd rather have the money. And then I found it to be ironic because Chef Kyle Tiers, my guy, won. And instead he won $10,000. And what did he buy with that $10,000?
Motorcycle?
A Triumph motorcycle. He
Awesome.
bought a vehicle that he's now riding, and it's beautiful and it's so
bet.
cool. But like he ended up going the opposite way with it. So Dean Ogan's probably like, I can't win for trying. It doesn't matter what I do.
No, you got the option though to do whatever you want with it, and that's cool.
But you, for one, won. Hold on, I got it written here. You won a restored 1949 GMC 5-window pickup truck. Is that right?
Yeah, I did.
What happened to it?
I sold it. Like, I held on to it for a couple months, man. It was
okay.
it was badass. Like,
Yeah.
it was fast as hell. It had like a small block. I don't know crap about cars, man, but it's
Yeah.
got like a small block engine in it.
Yeah.
Man, that thing would tear. It would tear it up, and it was just fun to.
350, I believe, in that thing.
Yeah.
GMC 350 or Chevy 350. But
So my son ripped off the side view mirror. And he
Doing
was like,
what?
He was like 3 years old, man. He just thought it'd be a good idea to hang on it one day, and it was in the
It's a big
garage.
3-year-old, though, to like rip off a rear view.
You know, the little welding on it's like that big. So it's like I looked at it and I was like, I'm gonna have to take care of this thing.
yeah,
I think the tailpipe already fell off one day. So
that's the thing is these classics take a lot of upkeep. I had a vintage Wurlitzer 1973 200A organ piano, like a 61 key piano, which I love. But then my daughters got a hold of it and just started smacking on the keys, and they were breaking it, and it was breaking my heart. And I'm like, I got to sell this thing because I can't watch it just slowly.
Well, and also
deteriorate.
maintenance would have cost more than what the whole thing is probably worth.
Yeah, I was just like, no, this needs to go to a better home. It was like I got
Yeah.
it set, so I sold it to the pastor at the Durham church or whatever, and so it's there now if you want to listen to it.
that's awesome.
But okay, so let's get to the competition though, because so many people have told me like the lore of Dean Thompson is that like I don't know what it is, but he knows how to compete. Like he knows how to win.
Would you say he's like the Tom Brady of competition cooking?
No, I like Dean, so I would never say that.
yeah,
But I'd give him like Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre type of thing. Like
Each of them has only won one.
okay,
yeah,
well
I got 3, man. Thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah. Who's won
Mahomes?
3?
Mahomes?
Sure, fine.
No, Mahomes has 2. Sorry.
Who has 3?
Who has 3? Troy Aikman.
Montana has 4.
Montana has 4. Troy Aikman has 3.
Okay, you're the Troy Aikman.
Never a cowboy.
I don't think he ever threw for 300 yards, by the way.
He
Not
was
one
the
game.
worst fantasy
It's a-
football
it's-
quarterback of
yeah.
all time. I know. I had him on my team all the time. But
You're not that old. You had Troy Aikman.
Who, by the way, you're
Yeah.
a big sports fan.
Yeah.
Who is your team growing up?
Growing up, I was a Giants fan.
Oh, my man.
Yeah, so my parents are from New York. When the Panthers came to town, though, man, I had to take them over
You
the
switched,
Giants.
huh?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily initially, but like over time, they grew on me.
Okay.
You see way more Panthers football than you do Giants.
Yep.
So I'm a Panthers fan and Giants secondary, and then
they made some big moves this year. But let's not get too
Let's
far
not
off
get,
that.
yeah.
Let's get back to this competition stuff, though. I do know, like for one, I'll just throw one out there. You got a cheat code about desserts. It's a chocolate cheat code.
yeah. So and I figured it out over time. Quite frankly, like I just knew that you had to add chocolate. I mean, the idea was to. I mean, at some point, I think in 2013, you had to use all the ingredients in every dish.
Right. So
And they
just so
changed it
those
the
that don't
following
know, like this competition, it's like a blind
Yeah.
service. There's 2 chefs in the back. They're cooking in this nice big kitchen. They're given secret ingredients that were supplied by the event, and then the guests are given these items, these dishes with the secret ingredients inside, but we don't know if it was Chef Dean Thompson's food or it was Kyle Tiers' food, for instance. And so we don't know, and people just vote on which one they like the most there, and then at the end it's revealed who made what, and then someone wins.
Yeah. So the year before, man, I had watched it go on,
Yeah.
and I was actually part of somebody's team. But then when they had
Visual
the championship,
learner.
yeah, they had the championship at the hotel, the state championship.
Oh, nice.
So it was in my kitchen. So I was there to help and watch. So I was watching, and I think at that point you realize like I'm I don't want to say I'm just as good, man, but I can execute this stuff too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's not rocket science. I was good at what I did. I just didn't know how good I was. Because I was kind of confined to just working my ass off at the Renaissance all the time.
Sure.
I mean, I worked a ton. I don't even remember my 20s because it was spent there. You know,
Yeah.
so
And you're pumping out 300 plates for like an event all the time.
sure, all the time.
Yeah.
We were busy as hell.
Right.
Per square foot, I think it was the busiest Marriott in the country.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
banquet space, yeah, it was that busy when we first opened. For the first like 6-7 years, man, it was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Because that place doesn't even have a restaurant now.
No, it's a mess. It's
Yeah.
a mess. But I shouldn't get into that. We still operate it.
Oh.
So what, I think I saw some things, and actually I looked at what the dishes that scored the highest and what they had in common, things like that. And then, to be honest with you, man, the vendors that we used and things like that, I knew all the North Carolina products for the most part.
So it wasn't going to be a surprise.
I mean, they did a good job of, like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like your standard issue stuff either. Like, it wasn't necessarily just what the vendor provided.
Yeah.
They went way outside of that too.
Yeah.
But I had a good idea, and I did my studying. We didn't have a pastry chef. Everybody else had badass pastry chefs. So I'm like, listen, chocolate or desserts always score the highest. So I'm going to put myself out there. I'll start working on desserts, and I'll write the menu. You guys execute it. I'll do the dessert. So
Yeah.
that was our game plan going into it. So that's
You put your specific focus on the dessert. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
I started working on desserts probably for 2 or 3 months before the competition started, and I had like, let's call it, at the time when we first started, I probably had like 5 go-tos that I called like fat boys,
Yeah.
stuff that like. Cake and ice cream was always the deal, right?
Right.
And different forms of cake. Like a cake pop is just cake with icing mixed into it and like balled up.
Right.
So what can you do with that? Can you fry it? Like I would start messing around with stuff like
sure.
that. And
How much more calories and fat can I pump into this?
Sure, but that's what people like.
Yeah,
man.
no, exactly.
I think when I beat Scott James in the championship, man, I hit him with a dessert that he had 0 chance of winning after that. I called it the Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
And it was like
Homer Simpson.
it was like a donut with some type of icing on chocolate icing, I think, with beef sprinkles because you had to use beef in it, corn ice cream, candied bacon, and I called it the Homer Simpson. It had bacon, it had ice cream, and it had the donut, like
Yeah.
all the things you
It's like,
remember from
how
the
do you
Simpsons.
lose?
Yeah.
And the naming of it,
Tugged
like,
yeah, that's a good one too. Is the name you tugged at the heartstrings?
Yeah,
of
yeah.
everybody. Yeah, so everyone's like, I gotta vote for that.
And then you sprinkled a little Lipitor on it for all
right.
the cardiologists in the room.
Yeah, I didn't care about that. man. I'm not here to take one bite and move on. you know?
Right. All right.
So, but this year you were a judge at least for one of the evenings, and I
I
was
try to do
in
that as
attendance,
much as possible.
which was fun because you had it was you and also a friend of the show, Bobby McFarland. He was one of the judges, and then I'm trying to remember who your other judge was.
He was a blogger. He was awesome too.
Matt
man.
Lardy,
Yeah.
who was on the show earlier this year. He writes for Eater Carolinas and freelance. He does it. So it was just funny. I'm looking. I'm like, all right, I know all the judges. Like the only one that hasn't been on the show is Dean, and I'm going to get him on the show for
Yeah.
one. But you were cracking me up. We were all the booze was flowing, the wine was flowing. They're asking you questions in between courses. They're like, "Well, what do you think of this?" You're like, "Do you want the honest truth? Because I've had 4 cocktails." You were cracking me up because you even, I mean, granted, it weighted in our favor. Not that you had anything to do with me or anything, but like Kyle put a dish out, and he really did, like, he kicked ass that particular round. Like his food was excellent, and I think Dean even said, he's like, I mean, it's pretty obvious who's gonna win this one. He didn't say the name, but he's like, we all kind of know. And then like even Bobby's like, there was a huge difference in quality level between the dishes. It's pretty straightforward here.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't know. I didn't know which chef did what.
Yeah.
I just knew. And the funny
Yeah.
thing is, I think I ended up being wrong because I thought my favorite first course was the same as my favorite second course, and it was the same chef. But I
Yeah,
think I
that
was
particular
wrong.
night, that particular night, all of Chef Kyle's were the same, like, same
Style.
round. I think it was all the second or whatever. Like, it was all the same.
Okay.
So they didn't flip it up. They didn't do, like, Chef A went to whatever, back and forth. It was all the same pattern, which sometimes is confusing, too, because you're like, wait a minute, are they really going to have the chef be served second each course? You know what I mean?
But I thought you don't know.
no, ultimately, like we figured it out because what they reveal.
Yeah, but they don't know. It's just this is Chef A's food. This is Chef B's food.
He knew. I didn't know. That's
Chef A isn't always the same, right?
Correct. Well, okay, so if it's
in this instances was, but that could be just as much of a
right. It was an arbitrary way they
random.
delivered
Okay.
it, but the way it ultimately happened was that Kyle's was always the second course served in every round. But
Okay.
we didn't know that at the time.
yeah.
Got it. Anyhow, it was
All right.
who cares?
Here-
We're down the weeds.
Here's what I'm thinking, Max. We have been known on this show to cook up some stuff, and I mean figuratively, not literally. You'll do the cooking. How do you feel about coming out of retirement?
Man, I did that in 18 and I won the truck. I won 13, 14. And those were like, to me, I mean, those were like tough, man. Like 64 competitors.
Yeah, there was a lot.
Well,
You
I'm
got
just
the best of the
talking
best.
about you as the champ emeritus
Oh, yeah.
coming against the
It's fun.
current champ in a cooking competition. You've been wanting to do this at Crafton forever.
Oh, you're saying like do a
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
You versus Kyle.
Oh.
I'm throwing it down.
Oh, jeez.
The current champ versus the champ emeritus.
We got a lot on our plate, my friend.
If you want to do that, then let me. No, I mean, I'll do it, man. I don't know. I'm rusty as hell. I know my team. They're rusty for sure.
Yeah, that's like George Foreman coming back and beating up on some young
Yeah,
kids. You know?
yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great.
I would rather just come and do a dinner with them, man. That would be fun. If we just
Yeah.
did a couple of dishes, I would dig that.
That's cool. I'll be happy to do the wine to that.
No, it's awesome, man. Look, we appreciate you coming in to talk to us about this. I mean, you do have, maybe not everybody's dream, but it is kind of like the dream job. If you're a chef and you've been doing this and you've been grinding for years, you're kind of like, what do I do like after this? Like, I don't want to close every night and mop floors and do all this stuff every single day. It does become a grind. So you're like, what is the next level? And a lot of chefs get out and become food reps. They work at Cisco, which is a cool job as well. And it's like you do find other paths, but sticking in the same path, but becoming more of like a quote unquote job, or like one where you could probably retire with a nice package. This is the type of gig. Like you've kind of set it up real nice, or they've set it up nice for you, however you want to look at it. It is cool. You guys, I feel, those that have your job are like behind the scenes all the time. You never see that person. You're like, who's the one running this whole thing? They're like, yeah, we hide them. We're like, you never see them out in the wild. So it is kind of fun to talk to somebody that really is responsible for this type of avenue and this aspect, because you also you're responsible for a lot of revenue for this company coming through, whether good or bad, and I'm sure they know. They're like, hey, Q3 wasn't as good as Q2. What's up, Dean?
Yeah.
And so you've got to answer for that stuff. And so I'm sure you have a lot of pressure, but all in all, like, is it a good gig?
Man, it's a dream job for me too. I still have the same fears as some of those people that you just mentioned, as far as like what's the future. With all this AI stuff and things like that coming on.
Yeah.
Like, how much am I going to be needed eventually? But
I think your bosses have more of a chance of being replicated by AI than you.
yeah, I mean,
Or the people under you. Like, that's what I was wondering
it's everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's at risk, I think, eventually. I mean, we've been talking about it for years, I think, in the industry, and now it's kind of coming to fruition. McDonald's just went automated somewhere, and fully automated. You're going to keep seeing that, and some of these other, Disney's going to do it soon, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But, I guess the question that you asked, I don't know how to. It's a good gig. I'm not going to lie about that. There is some struggles. Obviously, it's the hiring challenges. We deal with a ton of stress. There's no doubt about it. Am I putting in the 80 hours a week like something? Hell no. Like, I don't do that anymore. I've got, just like everybody in this room, we've got kids. We've got things that are important to us outside of just work. So I've got some balance in my life. I think. I don't even know how to answer that question, quite frankly, man. It's not. We all have our own challenges. Our budget this year is like $160 million.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to make, man. And just so you know, that's 60% higher than last year's.
Oh, geez.
Wow. 60% increase in a recession?
60%.
Well, that's probably because
Well, we've added a lot of properties too along the I just told you I opened
They don't give you that as organic growth, huh?
I opened up 11 restaurants in the last year.
Damn. Jeez. Yeah, that's a lot too. All right, before we get out of here, I just want to ask one last question, and because this relates to everybody across this industry. You mentioned your leadership skills and your management style. Can you give us a quick insight into what that looks like? Or how you did you acquire that naturally, or was there some books you read or a mentor in that?
Man, kind of like we talked earlier, man. I see the people that I've worked with along the way. Like I don't treat anybody different. I treat everybody fair. I don't treat them the same either.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like if you're not a great performer, I'm not going to treat you the same as somebody else who's been performing for me for like 5 years, and they, for some reason they can't show up to work.
Right.
If it's your third month and you're mediocre at what you do, and you don't show up, I'm going to give you crap. You know what I mean? That person's not going to get as much crap. That's just how it works. I'm sorry. I know HR probably doesn't want to hear that, but that's the truth of the matter. My leadership style, man, I'm really good at teaching. So I can tell you the why behind things. So when it comes to cooking, things like that, if I'm explaining something to you, I can explain it to you in a way that you'll understand the reasoning and you'll absorb it. Like it's not over your head. Essentially, I try to keep things.
They can retain it.
Yeah. So even when I'm doing a food show for the service team, which I often do in these openings, I usually handle that portion of the training program. Even though it's not even my food, I just know I'm going to explain it to the service staff so that they can regurgitate it to the guest.
Totally.
And make sure that they understand it.
Yep.
What they're about to receive, rather than, it's just a lot of chefs let their ego get involved, and they want to
show off.
Well, they want to speak in terminology that people don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's stupid to me. Like but I think just having the ability to relate to people, teach them, help them understand the why. I can grind, man. I'm good at what I do when it comes to cooking, and I'm creative, I execute things. So I think it's more of like everybody's like lead by example, lead out in front of the cart instead of behind it and this and that, or whatever the term is. I don't know about all that, but I just know that like just care about your people and be willing to do whatever job you're expecting them to do. And coming up, man, you had to be the best in every position before you got promoted. So before I was ever a sous chef, I was the best in the kitchen at every single position in the kitchen. That's how it worked.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with Johnson & Wales. Nobody gave a shit back then. You telling me these guys that have been in the kitchen for 15 years who probably, ran from something in Mexico or Guatemala, they're not going to respect you, look at you in a certain way. You got to be better than them before they can respect you or give you any. So that was kind of the way I grew up in the industry. And,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that gathers some respect in itself, man. When you walk in a room and you got to have a presence.
Yeah, man.
That's great information. I love that.
Yeah, cool. Well, Chef, thank you so much for sharing your insights here, and good luck with that 160 million big number. Let me know if I can help you with that at all. And for all you out there, go find yourself a Concord hospitality property. You will eat and drink extremely merrily.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.